Okay, so next up we've got diversity and inclusion, teaching to practice. Since 2020, CYP mental health programmes at KCL have sought to improve teaching on equality, diversity and inclusion, making it an integral part of the training. This presentation aims to share our progress in teaching, skills development and reflective practice.
And to talk us more through this, please welcome to the stage Caroline Bengo and Steve Hackney from King's College London, Samira Shariff from Lewisham CAMHS and Lily Jordans from Hertfordshire NHS Trust.
Thank you very much for the lovely introduction. It's very hard for us to follow what has been an amazing day full of really wonderful presentations. So we hope you'll bear with us. I'm Caroline. This is Lily and Samira. Steve is with us, but he's not going to join us on stage, but you will see him in our video later on today. The hardest thing is obviously getting the pointer to work. No. Oh, it did go. Ooh. All right, lovely. So as we know, there are obviously mental health inequalities have been brought to our attention on both a global and national level. And obviously, as practitioners, it's really important that we act to reduce discrimination and that we provide fair and accessible needs-based services to all our clients. And as part of that, we in King's College London have been working really hard since 2020 to ensure that this is kind of integrated within our teaching, but not just within the teaching. Obviously, ultimately, it needs to kind of trickle down to the community. So we want to ensure that this has an impact on a community level, a service level, and in our clinical practice. And we'll be sharing examples from that with you today. So I'm not going to talk for too much longer because I think it's important that you hear from the lovely Samira and Lily. But we just want to say that obviously we have our kind of core teaching at King's, which includes kind of social inclusion, participation, diversity, and we kind of are really kind of thinking about cultural competency. But I would say it's in our practice tutor groups and our clinical skills that we're really trying to ensure that this isn't just something theoretical, that our students know how to have these conversations with our clients, that they can kind of think about both the visible, the invisible, the voiced, the unvoiced differences and similarities between us and our clients, so that we're aware of any unconscious bias and so that we can kind of support them in being able to kind of access our services in a way that's meaningful for them. So I think that's kind of enough from me now, and I'm going to hand over to Lily. Thank you.
I'm so mindful of time, so forgive me if I talk really fast. So on a kind of community level, bear with us. That's why I left Caroline with the clicker. On a community level, we've kind of done some outreach projects just to kind of raise awareness and start talking about stigma. So lack of awareness of mental health services is a really big barrier to children and young people accessing support. So kind of to tackle that, we've reached out to community organisations like youth centres, churches, mosques, just to kind of try and develop some of those relationships with the community and to promote our service and to also start that conversation around mental health with young people. Stigma associated with mental health problems can inhibit help seeking and recovery. And stigma and discrimination in regards to mental health really vary between communities and how they conceptualise mental health. So we thought it would be important to start by arranging phone calls with the organisations to address any questions and concerns that they might have. We also wanted to discuss kind of who we are and what we do. During the phone call, during the workshop, we really explored mental health and stigma with the young people. We asked questions about what mental health is to them, what it means within their culture, and we provided space to kind of think about that with the other young people that were in the group. We thought it was an opportunity to kind of share in experiences or learn about other cultures. We included a variety of activities to encourage discussion and engagement with the young people, and provided information about our service, how they can access it, and those are resources that they could take away. Research has shown that this type of community approach is linked with an improvement in most aspects of stigma, so we hoped that we started to tackle that. Where am I? Sorry. We did a course of 6 workshops in different organisations, and we did have really positive feedback around them. We have some of them on the board. I'll try and rush through them. So young people really valued the space to talk about mental health and hearing about others' experience. They really felt represented by the staff that were delivering the workshop as well. That was some feedback we had, which was really nice. They reported a better understanding of mental health and an increased awareness of how to access the CWP service. There was also a really keen community interest in further workshops as a result. Hopefully you can kind of see the process, outcome and feedback highlights the importance of really getting out into the community to increase that awareness and start to overcome stigma. We're aware we haven't kind of ticked that box yet, but it's all a process and it does need a lot of development, but hopefully we made a start on that.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about the service level development. So I think at SLAM, we've been really important to kind of be the champions of diversity and equality. So as you can see on the left-hand side, the CWP team have worked alongside other colleagues within SLAM, and we've created the Equality and Diversity newsletter. So it's a monthly newsletter that kind of goes out to all everyone within the CAMHS sort of population, and the main emphasis of that is sort of kind of discuss exactly what's going on within the community. So as you can see an example of the August newsletter, we kind of focused on the South Asian Heritage Month, and the emphasis of that was kind of looking at the intersectionality between historical facts and personal experiences. So as you can see in August, they celebrated the 75-year anniversary of the partition, and that was with emphasis in the colonialism and how that sort of really impacted everyday individuals within the community, and how it's still impacting post-generational influences. Another thing that within SLAM, within the Lewisham CAMHS that we're doing is that we've created an anti-racism forum. So that's for colleagues to kind of come together monthly to kind of discuss lived experiences and also try and understand exactly in terms of our cases, what's current in terms of diversity, power struggles, inequalities, what's currently happening within the community that we can sort of bridge a gap between and things like that, and also our own personal experiences as colleagues or as members of staff within NHS and things like that, and the barriers that are still happening today. The last thing that I really wanted to talk about is the PRECREF, so the Patient and Carer Race Equality Framework. So that's an organisation with service users, specifically with Black communities and other ethnic minorities. And what we usually do with those, with that organisation is we have workshops with them to sort of understand what's going on within the community that kind of needs to have a focus on, and things like that. There's also the essence of within supervision. We are encouraged to talk about diversity and power struggles and how that's impacting our current caseload, and how we can better serve our young people and get their lived experiences, and essence like that. So I'm going to move on to now a video of our practice level, where we were just sort of discussing with Stephen how we're kind of putting diversity and inclusivity within our practice.
Tell me a little bit about how difference and diversity is being considered within your practice.
Difference and diversity is being considered in our practice all the way from referral. So when we receive a referral in our team, what happens is that we usually look at whether the young person has any special characters. We make sure who we kind of look at the practitioner that has been set to kind of look at it, what sort of details are in the referral that may sort of hinder on maybe either diversity, for example, discrimination or mental health support that's been received in the past, and things like that. As soon as we've done an assessment with the young person, I think it's really important to sort of kind of what we usually do is discuss whether they've sort of got help from outside sources. So what mental health looks like for them, what they found helpful in help seeking outside of a mental health facility, and sort of try and adapt that in our sort of interventions and things like that.
Thank you, Samira.
I absolutely agree with everything Samira said. I think it's something that's so important and needs to be considered from the point of referral through to endings. During initial assessments, I think the social graces model can be a really helpful tool to spark discussions around diversity and difference. Introducing it initially in assessments helps young people to understand that you're inviting them to talk openly about these points. And it also helps us to then tailor interventions based on the information shared. I think it also plays a huge role in formulation. A case comes to mind of a 16-year-old whose parents were migrants to the UK and held quite different values to his own. We were then able to explore how this might inadvertently maintain the feelings of low mood and anxiety, but through this we also have really important discussions around how his faith acted as a protective factor. Some young people might need more time to process this, so it's really helpful to reintroduce the social graces once rapport's been developed, and you can then adjust the rest of the accordingly. Considering them throughout the course of therapy as well is just so important.
Thanks, Lily. It really sounds like you're both really embedding it throughout the whole course of therapy, and what I'm hearing is it's really important with that therapeutic alliance as well, so thank you. So what are young people and their families telling you about the impact of holding these conversations about difference and diversity?
I think especially with the young people that I've worked with, they've reflected on how important it is to have these conversations, and how they, in terms of these, they were not aware that they were able to have these conversations so openly and things like that. And also I think, in terms of with our practice as well, being aware of, for example, celebration dates and things like that, and, offering young people, a tailored approach in terms of when they can have sessions, being aware of things such as, prayer times and things like that, has been really massively important in promoting that engagement, and for them to feel like this is a space really, truly tailored to them and what they need.
Similarly to Samira, I've had really positive experiences with it all. Initially, when I opened up the discussion about diversity and inclusion, some young people have the response of, oh, I didn't know we could talk about this. Some young people even sharing that it's the first time they've spoken about a particular issue, so they feel quite heard. I think these conversations then have a huge impact on treatment outcomes and the therapeutic alliance. I don't think I'd have been able to have some of the conversations I've had without actively opening them up, especially in some of the cases where my visible social graces are quite different from the young person. I think these conversations can also support when things come up that could rupture the therapeutic alliance. A particular case comes to mind where family were really strongly considering medication for their young person, to which myself and the service held quite different views. Because we had that discussion around diversity and difference, we were then able to explore different cultural views around mental health and medication. I think this positively impacted engagement and further strengthened the therapeutic alliance. Without it, I think it could have resulted in disengagement.
That's really interesting, Lily. So there's definitely, you both echoing the importance of permission to have these conversations and creating that space for them. So thank you. My last question then, what would your top tips be then for other practitioners when considering diversity and difference in their practice?
I have loads, but just really reflecting on the discussions you've had throughout the intervention, from assessment to formulation, throughout the course of therapy and through to monitoring outcomes. Considering how you're opening up discussions around diversity and difference. So is it more conversational? Does the young person need visuals? Is the social graces model appropriate? If you have visibly different characteristics from the young person, is the worksheet format more accessible? Being really mindful as well of the limitations of social graces, really when thinking about children and young folk. families that have additional needs, and those considerations of intersectionality. I'd really like to look at adapting this model to increase the accessibility of this population. I also think team activities to develop your cultural competence, such as creating and discussing cultural genograms and using this practice to consider what you're bringing to sessions, is really important. I'm sure Samira has some as well.
It's what Lily has mentioned already, and I think if I add to that, I think it's important to notice that conversations might not always go the way you want during assessment, so don't be afraid to kind of continuously have these conversations again around diversity, inclusivity throughout the sessions as you're building rapport with the young person. I think also, you know, empowering yourself with knowledge by speaking to peers within your organization, you know, bringing things such as diversity up in supervision, being aware of your own biases, and kind of appearing as a blank slate as a practitioner, letting the young person color in their picture by themselves. In a way, you're there to kind of empower them to kind of know what to know, you know, in terms of what mental health looks like, but also mindful that they are, you know, in terms of they know what their problems looks like, and they're an expert on how they represent themselves and what their identity looks like.
We've had our 2-minute warning, so we're just going to finish up with Samira highlighting an identity wheel that she completed with a young person.
So the identity wheel kind of extends in terms of the social graces model, and with a young person, we've used the pseudonym of Grace. It's kind of thinking about how to have conversations of culture and tradition that are outside of, for example, what's on the social graces model. So this is Grace. She's a 16-year-old female who came in with symptoms of anxiety and low mood. During the assessment and throughout the sessions, we sort of created this essence of an identity wheel of what's really important to her. As you can see, some of the things that she mentioned was the importance of the Afro hair care, also things such as music, and she identified her religious belief as being Christian, and throughout, when we were talking about values and things like that, she was able to kind of highlight what's an important sort of scripture that she can hold to, a scripture statement within the Bible that can support her mental health whenever she's feeling quite low, or the days that she's kind of mentioned feeling quite low. She talked about cultural food that she likes, and it's not essence of just in terms of what culture can look like. As you can see, she's got a Nigerian background, but she also mentioned, she still likes to have, Nando's fries and chips and things like that. So it's sort of being mindful that the fact that culture is, it's a colorful experience and things like that. And also the essence also of what mental health can look like for a young person, and, in terms of how to support them even with their backup team. Because she comes from a deeply religious background, the fact of the essence of seeking support from church members and Bible studies and things like that, and the essence of what vulnerability looks like, because for certain communities, speaking also just from my own, in terms of it's sometimes difficult to be vulnerable, in this essence of needing to be resilient and pushing through, and kind of cutting down that essence of actually vulnerability can be a strength. You can look at things in a different way and saying, actually, in the essence of in service we use this analogy of the cupboard. You can't just throw everything in a cupboard, because eventually, the doors will flung open. But in actual fact, if you take each difficulty and really look at them in essence of one difficulty at a time and unpack them slowly and then place them back in the cupboard, things will be better over time, and being able to know that there will be ebbs and flow within your mental health journey. But that's also to empower you, that it's not one size fits all, and diversity can actually empower you within the essence of mental health. And it should diversity and inclusivity is an ongoing subject, and it should continuously be looked at, and people shouldn't be afraid of in terms of, I don't know how I'm supposed to approach that. Just kind of continuously being curious and being vulnerable as a practitioner in yourself, and giving that young person the opportunity to tell you what their identity is and empower them. Thank you. I believe I've gone over.
thank you very much for that, shedding some much needed insight into such an important issue. So we're about to bring on our final speaker of the day, who's going to share some reflective thoughts on the CWP role and share some insight into the future as well. So if you want to introduce our final speaker.
If Peter Fonagy can please come up to the stage from NHS England. Give him a warm welcome.
Thank you guys for that introduction. Is this perfect? I just wouldn't want it any less than perfect. Thank you. I realise that we're running slightly behind time. Let me assure you, I will not be between you and the train that you need to catch, the cup of tea that you want to drink. I will finish bang on time, in the middle of a slide, not a problem. But I want to start, first of all, by saying a big, big thank you. And the thank you really is maybe in part on my behalf, as being the person who actually originally designed the CWP role way back when, on the back of an envelope. Here it is. No, but to be serious, it was at that time a new development, a new idea. And has it turned out to have been a good idea? Yes, it's a great idea. And I will try and say to you in a little bit of a bit of numbers a little bit, but not very much, why CWPs are the future in many ways. And I'm really proud to be part of I won't be part of the future, I can assure you. I'm well past my sell-by date, but I am proud to have walked along this journey with some of the most able colleagues in mental health that I had the privilege of working with over the years, that have shaped child wellbeing practitioners in the way that it has come to be in this country. Now, people had difficulty with this. Was there a reason for that? There was a reason for it. That's it. Okay. These are some congratulatory notes. You can't read them. I got them from colleagues from Exeter, from children and young people, saying what an incredible benefit it has been for them to have someone who actually stood alongside them and had the skills to be able to support and help them through a difficult moment in their life. There are different ways of saying it, and these particular voices are quite different, emphasizing different things about how, and really the bottom line is life-changing. It can be, when you're young, to have someone who comes with skills and competencies to understand. Now, why is that so important? Please. Okay. Okay, why is that so important? Well, well-being is the problem of our time. And that's just with a few numbers. Young people are a quarter of the world's population. And mental ill health and problems of well-being, they see as their number one threat. But that's not all of it. The bigger problem is that we know that birth rate is dropping, which creates a bit of a perfect storm, because the number of people that the young people will have to look after when they get to middle age is much greater than they are. So demographically, they're massively disadvantaged. We know that it takes longer to become an adult. We know that young people have a long journey to travel before their brains mature in order to be able to function fully. We know that there is a massive amount that they have to overcome if they develop problems early on that's not dealt with. There's just a little bit of a graphic of what we now know the long-term consequences of childhood mental disorders are. So it's a bit of a problem that we also know that there is a massive increase in these problems. I'm sure other people have talked about it. But the figures are really eye-watering. When you think about 154% increase in the probable prevalence of disorder in 17 to 19-year-olds, compared to 25% just 5 years ago, it is worrying. But even more worrying is the massive acceleration demand, which I'm sure other people have talked about. And also that relative to that, even though the workforce is increasing, even though there are more CWPs now than there ever been, more mental health professionals looking after young people, looking for young people than ever been, actually the proportion of young people who are getting adequate service has not increased because of the increasing number. And that's, to me, is a real problem. There are various reasons for that, and I'm not going to go into that. But I think some of it is really, really important from the point of view of what your long-term ambitions should be in terms of community well-being practitioners. I think, and you will hear me saying this in a number of different ways, I think we have to move away from a model of mental disorder that I was brought up with. And interestingly enough, this is a bit of an anecdote, I was at the retirement do of David Clarke, somebody you might have heard of. As these retirement dues often have kind of photographs of the people that have qualified with that person. And at that time, believe it or not, men were in the majority in clinical psychology training programs. So whatever happened with gender actually happened more recently. It didn't happen back then. There were all these men with long hair. I had long hair, you can't imagine that. But anyway, all I'm getting at is that there's a change of culture, and part of that is a number of things that are perhaps less relevant in the future, but isolation, increased loneliness, and being more dependent on social media are really, really important. Also, the schools having closed during the pandemic was a kind of experimental study to show us actually schooling is really important. Schools are an important part of what we need to make a young person, an adult member of society. I would also want to tell you about what I find perhaps the most worrying of surveys that I've recently come across. And this is a survey in 60 countries of 60,000 individuals, asked a simple question: do you feel that you were better off in terms of your feeling, your well-being, than your parents? And the vast majority, 75%, respond positively to that. Then they're asked this question: and do you feel that your children, or children of today, will have a better, worse, or roughly the same life to you? And at that point, there is a drop of 20% in positivity, that we are pessimistic about our own children. So this is where I want to actually now start appealing. What does all this got to do with me? Now, in my view, and this to me is the future of your profession, you are here to counteract something that has happened to our culture, which actually has caused those eye-watering increases in the prevalence of mental disorder. And what is that? What has happened? Well, we have managed, we, by which I mean I, not personally, but my generation, and we have managed to create a crisis narrative about youth. We've managed to create a narrative that's paralyzing, where the problem of mental health becomes overwhelming, where there is every potential of a crisis fatigue setting in, and people actually no longer being concerned about mental health or well-being because there's nothing that we can do about it anyway. We have created very damaging stereotypes about young people. Children, that has created really a very unbalanced picture. Supporting positive development is really what we know is the critical thing. We have made people aware of mental disorder and its consequences, but we haven't made them understand adequately. And this is, if there is a sentence that I want to leave you with. You, as a profession, are not here to simply retroactively repair the mental health of young people. You're here to build the mind, the balanced mind of the next generations. I think we all need, but particularly you as a profession, need to think about mental health differently. Rather than persistently alerting everyone how dreadful it is, we need to change the narrative to something about what can we do about it, what's positive, and help young people, as I heard just now beautifully expressed by Samira, their identities and what they can do to make the world a different place. So you have to take on a new role, not one of repairing low mood, repairing anxiety, but also of building mental health and well-being, supporting what we now understand to be the brain development of children and young people that goes on up to the age of 25, after which actually just hopeless. But anyway, I think what we need to focus on is what facilitates health, not simply what causes illness. So, what's the desirable approach that we should take? And this is my message for the future, and will be my last slide. We need to change the narrative away from young people as victims of their circumstances to one where they feel that they are active agents who are in control of their lives. So we don't so much need to help them just manage stress, but address the social circumstances that cause stress. That, by what I mean, we as mental health professionals, you as mental health, need to get into the community and try and teach the community to deal better and create less stress for young people. So when you go into schools or any other community settings, the point isn't to help that young person cope with the stress that they face and understand, but to talk to the social environment so that the social environment changes in the way that young people need it. You need to be able to identify the opportunities that they have in relation to being agent, being active in taking charge of their lives. You need to be able to be active in the field of policy, locally, particularly, in changing local policy so that it benefits rather than impinges on the experience of young people. And finally, in that sense, you need to help young people experience agency to enjoy life. Now, I think as clinical psychologist that I trained, you're not going to believe this, but I was qualified as a clinical psychologist 43 years ago. How many times have I talked to people about how they could enjoy their lives? Not often. I never was in the textbook. It was never there. Nobody told me. Because I knew that it was important personally, but it wasn't part of my job as a clinician. And that has led to a situation where the prevalence of physical disorder has benefited massively from advancement in science. And here I stand in front of you as a testament to this. I shouldn't be here demographically. I should be dead, not bothering people anymore. But here I am, still have a job even, sort of. Yeah, I do really. But we are getting older. But the point, I'm going to finish in 2 minutes. Do not worry about it. The point is that we actually need to change the mental health narrative. And you are here to change that mental health narrative in the context that you work. To balance risk with opportunity. To talk about health, genuinely talk about mental health, meaning health, not mental illness. To help young people develop curiosity, adaptation, discovery, and excitement about those things. To work with them collaboratively, which I think you're the best suited profession to do, to help them find their opportunities. And I would want to emphasize that you're there really also to make sure that they receive support from whatever there is that's around them. Young people do not need to be our next crisis, but they do need CWPs to do better for them. And this includes changing our story about their mental ill health. You are the future, I believe, of prevention in mental health. A future that will change that prevalence curve going up or being steady to one that goes down, because we all become better able to enjoy our lives. Thank you very much.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the day. We just want to say a huge thank you, me and Grace, to Vicky and everyone involved in putting on the conference today, everyone here and all our speakers as well. And just thank you for the opportunity for us to be involved and also to share this platform with the Midlands Young Advisors. Has been a pleasure as well, so that's all from me.
Wow, I have goosebumps from just listening to everyone throughout today. I'll be like this whilst going home. One last favour I want to ask each and every one of you. On your booklets, on the back of them, there's a QR code. If you can scan that and please fill out the feedback survey, that would be brilliant. Also, I want to wish everyone safe travels home. You know, get home, have a nice dinner, have a lovely time. But yeah, I'm glad. I hope everyone's enjoyed today as well. Brill.
And thank you again to Peter for coming and doing a really inspiring end to the day. I think it was such a positive message, and it's kind of really made me think, and probably a lot of people in the room, about future directions and where we might take ourselves, as have all of the talks today. I have to say, I was enthusiastic about CWP at the beginning of the day, and I'm even more enthusiastic about it now, if that's possible. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for the teams that have presented and got people together. Thank you to all of the organising committee, all of the universities around the country that have really worked hard together to put today on. Thank you to Elaine and all the NHS England crew for coming and joining as well, and also for your continued support, all of you, in the CWP project. It's really, really important. And Jonathan, particularly, I don't know where Jonathan's gone, he was sitting there, but he's not anymore. There he is. So a massive particular thank you to Laura, Beth, Jonathan and all of the Exeter crew who've organised today so beautifully. So thank you very much.